Hello, I'm Jim from Landmark Forbes, and I'm here with one of my fellow agronomists, Lindsay, and we're discussing with Scott, one of our clients, one of the key areas of the Landmarks Idea program, improving water efficiency. It's all about managing every droplet of water you get, so maximising your soil health, so every rainfall event you can capitalise on as much infiltration, and from there you can grow as much crop as you can from the water you store. One of the components of improving water efficiency is the grazing or the livestock component and the stubble management, soil health. Lindsay's an agronomist with us in Forbes, as I mentioned, and he's also a farmer. He has a mixed farm where he crops and runs livestock on it as well.
With your livestock, there's certainly lots of issues with compaction and reduction of stubble and those sort of things. So we tend to try and run our livestock on one end of our farm that's not as well suited to cropping as the other end, and try and keep our continual cropping program separated from the livestock as much as we can. There is some overlapping and some compromises to be made there, but you have to live with that.
You mentioned, Lindsay, compaction you can get out of sheep under certain situations. Another big compactor of soils that we've noticed over the last few decades is cultivation. Scott, you've gone from historically a very conventional farming system to 8 years ago, switching back to no-till. Can you make comments on how you've seen your soil health improve and infiltration rates, hence water efficiency?
We've always cultivated our country several times a year to combat weeds, but with our agronomists and with technology, we've brought it round and had to buy new gear, and saying that, it's been a good management tool to the point of reducing costs and getting better crops. It comes down to better managing your farm.
Have you found that your soils are holding more of that moisture and getting less crusting and compaction at that?
They are. We used to have a lot of sheep go on our stubbles in after harvest, and we found that you'd have some rain which would end up sheep compacting the soil and really messing up the top sort of few centimetres. Thus, when you're coming around to your cropping for your next year, there would be a certain crusting there, and you would have troubles with emergence and seed to soil contact. So, but the soils that we've kept our sheep off, it's friable.
One of the things we've noticed throughout the district, farming operations that have moved to a zero-till approach with full stubble retention have retained considerably more moisture in the soil, and a lot of those farms that had dams on them, you don't see anywhere near the water in the dams that you do with like the full-blooded livestock people, because they're just not getting the runoff. It's all soaking in, which is good because every millimetre of moisture in the soil converts to kilograms of yield. So stubble retention is very important. As is the summer weed control that we've looked pretty seriously at this year with the amount of rain that we've had over the summer.
Have you seen that net benefit of water retention in your soil from the paddocks you've kept clean over summer?
Yeah, where I've been cropping the most and been sort of keeping no-till is where I've been using less chemical. Where the sheep haven't been going on the stubbles, it's not getting that carry-on weeds on there, and this year a lot of the paddocks that I've been cropping the most, I've only been sprayed twice.
Just one of the other things that we were talking about before was just retaining that stubble and keeping ground cover on your soil to protect your soil from evaporation and also from compaction from the rain droplets. And it holds, just like your garden, just the mulch on it holds the moisture in. One of the issues, or one of the problems that arise from that, is handling that stubble at sowing time, trying to get the machines through that heavier loading of stubble. Scott, you might be able to comment. You've been no-till for 8 years with the machine behind us here on 10-inch row space and knife point press wheel. You've had a few issues, especially with your higher stubble loading and also the moisture soil this year.
Yeah.
You're looking at altering your seeding system?
Yeah, I'm sort of in two minds at the moment. All depends on the cash flow, but I think that I've been on 10-inch, like I say, for 8 years, and it's been fantastic. Been good coverage. I'm thinking about either going to 14 or 15-inch, and also changing the machine to a parallelogram. So to converse with the better stubbles.
When we're in a row sowing, it's allowing us to retain that stubble, and we see it every year, don't we, Scott? It's imperative that stubble's there. If we can get the crop sown in a row the next year, especially if we're going to crops like pulse crops, Scott sows field peas, because they just don't have the canopy that cereals or canola get. The extra stubble that's left there from the previous year certainly aids us in that ground cover for the next year. Lindsay, you do a lot of work with some growers with disc seeders, and how are they helping the whole water use efficiency thing?
Oh look, the disc seeders have been performing exceptionally well through the dry times because, as you say, they don't disturb the soil. They only cut a small groove, slot the seed in, and away they go. From a machinery point of view, they've certainly got a big fit into these dry districts, and I believe down through the Mallee and other places like that where moisture is an issue.
And that probably leads us into another area. The old historic growing high yielding wheat crops and canola crops, it's becoming costly because we're just not getting the yields.
I think pulse crops have got a big fit in the overall rotational aspect of the operation because they have small canopies. They're deeply taprooted, most of them, and they provide a lot of benefits to the following cereal crops because of the root channels and that thing that they provide. Certainly, yeah, they don't use a lot of moisture in their growing period because things like chickpeas, field peas, lupins, they just don't have a big canopy. So, which can, I think, leads us on to canopy management as an overall aspect of agronomic production.
And Scott, you've gone from historically putting a lot of urea up front under your crops to now just sowing with your starter fertiliser and addressing your nitrogen requirements post emergence.
I'm more into putting phosphorus up front instead of urea. It depends on the paddock. If it needs, it might be low in at the start, so you might have to trickle 20-30 kilos just to help it along at the start. But if you're putting all that stuff up front, your crop's going to fail within a week on a warm day. So we tend to sort of talk to you blokes and sort of plan as the crop goes along. If it needs it, we'll put a bit on. And these days we've got a spreader, so it's not hard for us to just whip over 30-40 kilos at a time, and there's new products out now that you can put through your boom. But also I think it's with our moisture probes and other things, gives you better tools on how to apply things as the year goes on. And that's the good thing about those probes, you know how much moisture is in the ground.
We've got about 8 capacitance probes in. They're subsurface buried moisture probes. Scott's got 2 on two irrigation blocks and a dry land. And as Scott said, it's just a good way when you get your rainfall to actually measure how far down your rain events are going in your soil. You've got a lot more confidence to top dress in the spring if you know you've got 60 or 70 centimetres of subsoil moisture down there. So that's another tool that we're looking at as part of the Landmark Ideas program. Just to improve that water efficiency. One of the other areas that we could probably quickly mention about canopy management. Canola is always a hard one to manage the canopy early. The last few years have seen a lot of changes in canola varieties. We've got the Clearfield varieties and also the Roundup Readies. A lot of the hybrids now have got sensational early vigour, and they can punch through that stubble a lot quicker and get a canopy set up so that it's protecting the ground and again helping our water efficiency.
The whole canola industry is basically moving towards hybrids based on a lot of those reasons you spoke about. I've got some trials this year of some canola varieties that are hybrids, and they just grow like steam. They're unbelievable. And over the years I've seen a lot of hybrid crops grown, and certainly the seed's more expensive, but they more than by the yield they more than compensate for the cost of the seed. They're very adaptable to climate, soil type. More dollars for you, Scotty.
More dollars, that's right. When you look at a plant, this high, and you got a plant that high, well, it's chalk and cheese as far as which way we'll go next year. I mean, hybrids will certainly put a lot more hybrids in.
The significant dry matter production that they have, there's been a lot of trial work where they've come in and grazed those crops, fertilised, and let them go to recover to yield, and they've had significant gross margin increases on those paddocks.
And one of the key areas that Landmark's been doing a lot of internal reviewing of over the last 5 to 6 years is precision ag, and by that I mean remote sensing, that we can aid farmers into getting into EM surveys, assessing the data off their yield maps, and accessing imagery work, whether that's through satellite imagery or the use of tools like GreenSeeker. Couple all these things together and we can provide a farmer with variable rate seed and variable rate fertiliser, or basically variable rate input maps, and that allows us to manage our paddocks and cropping program more efficiently through, say, as an example, on the better soil areas we can put higher seeding rates and more fertiliser, and on the lower quality or the soils that have got whatever issues they may be, compaction or acidicity or salinity, we can select those areas, improve them through the use of gypsum or limes or whatever it may be, and so with lower seeding rates and lower fertiliser. So we're saving on inputs, better utilising the inputs that we do use, which again leads to profitability.
Well, I've been playing with remote sensing through agronomy, certainly, probably for the last 10 years, and with our own farm in the last couple of years. And I think we probably raise as many questions as we answer. But there's no doubt that we can see zonal differences within paddocks that we can then break down and manage accordingly. The poorer areas, instead of pouring fertiliser and other inputs into them trying to lift them, we're just realising that perhaps we can't make any changes there, so we're just pulling back from those areas, and the areas that we can influence more, we're putting the inputs into there. So I think it's more about a better distribution, a better use, a more efficient use of your inputs to try and increase your profitability.
Being a farmer and being on the land, you seem to know the land, but sometimes you don't know what's underneath the top 10 centimetres, and having EM surveys, having a soil test done, you get, in talking to you blokes, you get a better understanding of what's actually happening under the soil.
Scott, just to touch on the irrigation side of water efficiency, as we mentioned earlier, you've done a pretty extensive irrigation development here on two of your properties over the last 3 years. You've gone away from the mainstream or probably district normal of having a channel system.
Sat down as a family and said, well, what's the best way to do this? And I said, well, how about we try poly pipes? And we sort of investigated it, and 3 or 4 months later we had all this pipe in the ground. It's good because it allows us to, as soon as you turn the pump on, pretty much the water goes where you want the water. There's no half-day lag where you're filling a channel up to...
No losses in the channel.
No losses, yeah. If you're doing seed crops and you've got multiple crops in one paddock, you can swap from one to the other.
So basically your new irrigation system's channelless, like straight out of the bore.
The only channel you got is our recirculation, which drags the water back to our dam. We've got country that water's quite quick, and for it to get good infiltration, we have to sort of run it over the bay a little bit longer. And in old times, you just let the water run out and it runs back in the river or wherever it used to go. Now we've actually channeling it back around and reusing it into the pipe. It can be up to 10 megs a day. Like it varies on what crop we're doing.
You're saving yourself 10 megalitres of water a day.
Yeah, depends on what crop it is. Yeah.
One of the other systems that we're doing with Scott, we've got a moisture probe, a capacitance probe, which we spoke about earlier today, in one of his irrigation bays, and another one over on another irrigation development on the other property. What the capacitance probes allows us to do, you can just monitor how much moisture you got left in your soil. So once you got, say, an example, it doesn't matter what crop it is, but you might pick soybeans in summer or a canola crop in winter, whichever. When you're starting to run out of moisture, you just jump on your computer, have a look where your moisture level is, and you can work out your daily usage. So you can schedule when your next irrigation is going to be. So instead of Scott just guessing, having a bit of an educated guess, he might be watering a day or two late or a day or two early. He's actually watering on time. So it's just another tool that's allowing us to better schedule the water, so we're not wasting water or we're not losing productivity through watering a bit too late. Backtracking over everything we've discussed today on water use efficiency, we've spoken about machinery selection and setup to handle stubble. That stubble gives us a ground cover to protect the soil from rain impact, and also the main driver behind having the stubble is just to give us protection from the environment through evaporation and wind. This all builds up soil health, and to me, I think the key driver behind improving water efficiency is your soil. Your soil's your bank, it's that everything grows from. So it's imperative that we have good soil health, and in turn that'll allow us to make the money to use all these tools we've discussed, like precision ag, remote sensing, satellite imagery, capacitance probes. And with that stuff, it's just an ongoing process, and through variety selection and canopy management to allow us to become sustainable. And by sustainable, again, I mean profitable, economically sustainable, environmentally sustainable.
There's a few little key mottos that I go by, and cover is king. I think a few people know that. The soil is a bank, like Jim said. It holds water, so the fuller you can get that bank, the more return you'll get out of it. Water
use efficiency is such a wide topic. There's so many components to it, but it doesn't matter if you're a grazier or a farmer. Any of the research through GRDC or the CMA or any agronomist, water efficiency and improving water efficiency is the key driver behind all our farming systems. and it's just one of the components of the Landmark Idea program. So stay tuned to Landmark Ideas to find out how you can improve your water efficiency.